host of the J. Rowe Show here on YouTube. I'm hanging out in my kitchen here, and I want to answer one of the main questions that I get on social media and here on YouTube all the time, which is, how do you get your protein? I'm kidding. I actually don't get that question anymore. But what I do get is, what is the #1 kitchen tool you recommend to buy? If you're just starting out on your healthy journey, maybe you're cleansing, doing more smoothies, really enjoying healthier plant-based food, what is the #1 thing to buy to outfit in your home kitchen? Well, you could go the route of the juicer or the food processor or the dehydrator. Those are all awesome pieces of equipment. But if there's one thing I think you need to purchase before everything else, it's definitely a high-speed blender. I remember back in the day when I started and I became vegan in the 90s, I had like the $20 Oster blender and I was making smoothies and trying my best. But when I went to culinary school almost 10 years ago, I had my first experience ever with a high-speed blender, and it literally changed my life. It's honestly the one piece of equipment every single day when I'm home I use. There are some days I don't even use my chef's knife, but I definitely use my blender every single day. So back at culinary school at Living Light, I was introduced to the Blendtec for the very first time. And I gotta say, that blender was awesome. I went out and bought one right away after I graduated. And I had a Blendtec for many, many years. I actually, I cheated for a few years with Vitamix. I did. But I came back to Blendtec. And the brand new model is so wicked awesome. It's so wonderful, so many great features, and I'm a huge fan. So I've been playing with it for a few months, and I wanna tell all of you out there who are thinking about getting a brand new blender that this is the coolest blender I've ever used. It's really fun, it's really easy to use. And this right here is the new Blendtec Designer Series 725 model. It's the top of the line Blendtec, and honestly, it's like an iPhone meets blender, and you'll see what I mean in a minute. It's got a really cool light up interface with icons that float up when you turn it on, and it's so easy to use, super easy to clean, and I wanna show you guys what I love to make every day in my Blendtec 725 series. So what you get first of all is this really huge jar. They call this the wild side jar, and it's got 5 sides to it. And if you look at that base with that blade, it's super easy to clean. One of the most challenging things with those early blenders was the blades were so sharp and the bases were so narrow. Well, the cool thing about this is you have this proprietary blade and you have a really wide base. So when you get down in there and you clean it, or you're using a spatula and you need to get those last few chunks, you're never gonna cut your hands and you're always gonna get those extra chunks. And then the base here is really, really rad because, like I said, it's like an iPhone meets blender. When you turn it on, what comes up is all these really great icons. Check this out. All of these functionalities, you actually have 6 different functions here, and each one is a pre-programmed cycle, which is really cool. So the one I use the most, you can probably see the most thumbprints, is the smoothie button. So first we have the smoothie button. We've got a button for salsa, for homemade ice cream, for whole juice. So yes, you can actually use this as a juicer too. So cool. You've got hot soup, and then it also has a clean function. So the best way to clean this is you can actually throw a little bit of dishwashing detergent or soap in there and just turn on the clean function, automatically cleans it. So you've got those 6 pre-programmed cycles. You have a slider here, which I'll demonstrate in a minute, and it also keeps track of your blends. So I'm gonna show you guys my everyday smoothie. I've actually had the request to show you what I make for breakfast every day. This is my go-to J. Rowe raw vegan smoothie. Check it out. So in the big blender mug, what I like to do is start with my favorite non-dairy milk. It helps if you've got an old school milk carafe, it just looks way cooler. And in this case, I have a blend of flax and rice milk. So delicious, super creamy. And I like to start with 1 3/4 cup of non-dairy milk. Now in the superfood department, I'm gonna add a nice heaping amount of goji berries. I like to add my gojis first actually, because when they're in the liquid, they get to soak up all that great non-dairy milk and get a little bit softer. Then for sweetness, and a potassium punch, we've got an organic banana. Now next up, for a spicy bite and for some great warmth-inducing properties in the wintertime, I've got a 1-inch piece of organic peeled ginger. Then I've got a little bit of cinnamon and a little bit of cardamom, which are great Ayurvedic warming spices. Then I'm gonna be using a little bit of my favorite protein. This is Sun Warrior's brand new classic blend. It's really, really fine, really creamy, tastes super amazing, and it's the vanilla flavor. And then next up, you gotta have your greens. So in this case, I'm doing a superfood greens blend, which is full of all kind of great things like seaweeds and grasses, spirulina, chlorella, super potent and high in protein too. And now for extra vitamin C, I've got a blend of baobab and a little bit of maca powder, which is great as an adaptogen to help balance your hormones too. Speaking of vitamin C, I've got some camu camu berry here, which is the second highest source of vitamin C known to man. Then I've got a tablespoon of chia seeds, which is an awesome energizer and a great digestive booster as well. Then I've got some wild arugula, which is an awesome thing. Green smoothies are super easy because you can pretty much throw in anything. Kale, spinach, arugula, dandelion greens. They blend right up, and with all the sweet fruit, it actually masks the taste of the greens, which is great for kids who don't want to eat anything green, if you know what I'm saying. You gotta be a food ninja. And then lastly, we have a blend of organic frozen fruit here. I've got some organic acai, some wild blueberries, mango, and dark cherries. It's such a delicious combination. Now, as powerful as this blender is, it's 725 watts, 3.8 horsepower, which is way more than the next competitor. It's not gonna have a problem with this, but nonetheless, even with a super powerful blender like this Blendtec Designer 725, you wanna add things in a certain order. So as you can see, I've got liquids on the bottom, heavy, dense frozen fruit on top, which just helps the blend cycle. Now, speaking of the blend cycle, let's pop our top on here nice and tight. And as I mentioned, we've got those pre-programmed cycles, or you can do it manually. So let me show you how to do it. Come over and you turn your blender on, and then all you have to do is hit this button right here, the very first one, which is our smoothie pre-programmed cycle. It's gonna start low and go high and blend for 40 seconds. Check it out. The cool thing about this blender is it actually sends you messages of affirmations afterward. Like, you just made the best smoothie ever. Can I get you anything else? Have a smoothie-tastic day. It has all these really cool messages. And as you can see, it keeps track of your blends, right? So I'm at 303 blends. When you get to certain tiers, the blender will actually give you a reward code. Then you go to Blendtec's website, you punch in that reward code, and you get all kinds of cool things like water bottles, t-shirts, extra blender mugs, and really cool Blendtec accessories to use with your blender. So the more you blend, the more you win. It's actually really cool functionality that they've built into the blender. So let's give it a taste here. Yeah, see, I like my smoothies on the thick side in the morning. I like to be a meal, you know? And then what I like to do, of course, is top it with a little bit of gluten-free superfood granola. I like it more like parfait style. That is my everyday J-Ro superfood raw vegan smoothie in my Blendtec. Oh yeah, that's slamming like Shaquille right there. Now, you might be thinking like, hey, smoothie's no big deal. Any blender can do a smoothie, right? Well, let's get a little bit more challenging for a moment, shall we? Have you ever thought to do homemade nut butter in your blender? Probably not, but we've got our twister jar here, which is really awesome. Check this out. So they've designed the top to have these kind of tines, these spinners. And what happens is whenever you put anything really dense in here, for instance, in addition to nut butters, I'll make pie fillings, I'll make pâtés, anything that's really heavy and dense, what it does is it helps crush it up by doing that motion. Let's try and do a hazelnut butter, right? Because hazelnuts are really dense and fibrous. Let's go for it. So with our twister jar, what we're gonna do is take some organic hazelnuts. They're also known as filibers, if you want to be all fancy about it, filibers. So take 1 cup of your filibers and put them right into your twister jar. We need to add a little bit of sweetness. Hazelnuts have a little bit of bitterness to them. So what I want to do is add a few tablespoons of a low glycemic sweetener. I've got a coconut palm sugar here. Then I've got a spice blend of ground cardamom and ground cinnamon. Any nut butter that's going to taste amazing has to have a nice salt balance. So add a healthy pinch of sea salt or Himalayan crystal salt. And then finally, what I find helps making any nut butter in your twister jar, whether it's almond, pistachio, hazelnut, pecan, I've made a ton, is adding a little bit of lubricity to the mix. And that's just a fancy way of saying add some oil. So a tiny bit, maybe a teaspoon or so of coconut oil actually helps to get that nice, smooth, creamy nut butter consistency. Now, we're actually gonna do the manual setting on this Blendtec because you don't wanna over-process your nut butter. Let me show you how it works. So in addition to those 6 pre-programmed cycles, you can do this manually as well. So what you can do over here is this slider is a really cool thing because it goes from 0 to 100. It has 100 speeds, but if you want to pulse in addition to it, you hit this button right here, and you can touch and hold the slider and you can pulse it at any speed. So what I'm going to do is hold this and I'm going to pulse it like that. And if you need to go a little bit more, you can actually hold it and go all the way to 100. Check this out. Takes some muscle, but what you have at the end, is some nut butter, right? You've got homemade nut butter. And the cool thing about this is nut butter, especially when you buy it at the store shelves or even in the bulk bin, can be really expensive per pound. It's one of the most expensive, I guess, convenience foods in the healthy lifestyle. But when you make your own, right, look at that, fresh hazelnut butter. That's good. That's really good. Your fresh nut butter will actually keep for about 7 to 10 days in the fridge. So you can make a big batch on Sunday. You can send it with the kids as they go to school with a fresh nut butter sandwich. You can take it for yourself as a quick snack to work. It's just a really easy and affordable way to introduce more protein and more vitamins into your daily meals. So as you can see, the Blendtec is pretty rad. It helps you make a variety of different recipes. In addition to smoothies and nut butters, you can do soups, you can do salad dressings, ice creams, salsas, literally the sky's the limit. And that's really the biggest reason why I got a high-speed blender was I saw the versatility of it. Because if you're gonna eat healthy, variety is the key. You don't wanna get bored eating the same healthy foods over and over again. So when you get yourself a blender, it really opens up a whole new world. So if you really dug the recipes today and you want to find out more about the Blendtec Designer Series 725 model, click on the link in the description field below to learn a lot more about this awesome new model. It's seriously so rad, I don't know how I'm ever going to go back. They have raised the bar so high on this new blender. So any questions about what I'm up to in the world, you can follow me, Jason Robel, on all of the social media networks. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe here to my YouTube channel, The J. Rowe Show, for weekly vegan recipes and vibrant living tips. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, Twitter, all over the place. Feel free to shoot me any questions about my experience with the blender, and I'll be happy to share that with you. Thanks again so much to Blendtec for designing this world-class blender and making my life easier every day amidst a very busy schedule. So I'm out of here, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is J. Rowe sending you big hugs, big love, and the most delicious, easy food ever. See you soon. So if you dug my smoothie and hazelnut butter recipes on the video, please give this video a thumbs up and leave me a comment below. What's the #1 thing holding you back from buying a high-speed blender and improving your health? I would really love the J. Rowe Show here on YouTube. I'm hanging out in my kitchen here, and I want to answer one of the main questions that I get on social media and here on YouTube all the time, which is, how do you get your protein? I'm kidding. I actually don't get that question anymore. But what I do get is, what is the #1 kitchen tool you recommend to buy? If you're just starting out on your healthy journey, maybe you're cleansing, doing more smoothies, really enjoying healthier plant-based food, what is the #1 thing to buy to outfit in your home kitchen? Well, you could go the route of the juicer or the food processor or the dehydrator. Those are all awesome pieces of equipment. But if there's one thing I think you need to purchase before everything else, it's definitely a high-speed blender. I remember back in the day when I started and I became vegan in the 90s, I had like the $20 Oster blender and I was making smoothies and trying my best. But when I went to culinary school almost 10 years ago, I had my first experience ever with a high-speed blender, and it literally changed my life. It's honestly the one piece of equipment every single day when I'm home I use. There are some days I don't even use my chef's knife, but I definitely use my blender every single day. So back at culinary school at Living Light, I was introduced to the Blendtec for the very first time. And I gotta say, that blender was awesome. I went out and bought one right away after I graduated. And I had a Blendtec for many, many years. I actually I cheated for a few years with Vitamix. I did. But I came back to Blendtec, and the brand new model is